Alright, time for another DraftScience video presentation. So we'll just deal with some more of the conversation, the hostile, nasty, unpleasant conversation. Uh, just not much I can do that it's in this style, but that's the that's the style they require it to be in. So on the Dr. Lincoln video, I did just post these 7 simple points, in the not much reading. It fits on one little page here, easily viewed. Um, just outlining what we all should be able to accept are the facts, and that those facts do limit what you can say about the slit experiments. The fact that the single slit is the two surface experiment, the two source experiment, and that the double slit is the four source experiment. And the tiny perceptual realization that you're not combining these two surfaces and these two surfaces. You're really making this experiment and this experiment. Those are the two experiments you are creating when you make a double slit. You're not doing this. Okay, you're doing this and this. Hey, that works out fine. One for Stephen Bro and one for Dr. Lincoln. Anyway, so we'll get to the Brozo bullshit about the size of the nodes and why he, once again, because he has no theory, he has no conceptual understanding, just isn't getting it. Just like all of you don't really get it. I mean, you believe in quantum mechanics, and yet you don't understand that if you don't quantize the other elements of the universe, that is gravity and energy, that your quantum mechanics isn't going to make any sense. So clearly, momentum is so easily quantized in the sense that you understand the volume is the mass, and the velocity gives the mass energy. And so it's really easy to quantize just by saying how much mass is there and how fast is it moving. And if you square the velocity, well, you lose all that. You don't have quanta of energy anymore. Anyway, too stupid. So anyway, so I post that, and Dr. Lincoln, yawn. Perhaps you should try to mislead someone. So he thinks there's something misleading in these simple little statements about like the single slit models, two vectors with, the single slit math with point sources at the surfaces. That somehow that's misleading. When it's much better that he misleads people with notions that the two slit experiment has two waves coming out of it. Even though anyone educated should know that's not good. Okay, that oversimplification isn't true. It overtly can't produce the actual mathematical configuration of where the light ends up. It can't get a right answer. It's impossible for it to get a right answer under any kind of rational circumstances. That is, circumstances where the slits are actually opened. A wavelength of light is insanely small, okay? You might as well say the slit is closed if you're going to make it smaller than a wavelength of light. And that's the only way their nonsense works. All right, anyway. I mean, it's just terrible. Another, well, whatever, I'll just read what I wrote. The funny thing is, this bro left this little short comment. Just hilarious. I mean, it never happens. Anyway, more unresponsive mush. I will put your glib yawn on my mantle. And in the future, when someone suggests that maybe we should stop literally pissing on the graves of the scientists of the 20th century, yes, these close-minded fairy tale endorsing, basically religious fanatics, okay, who have been telling these silly stories about all of these magical functions of the universe and all their 400 magical particles that don't really exist anywhere. They don't have any home. You can't ever find them at home. Right, you can only find them when you cause a car accident. Anyway, your yawn can serve us as a reminder of just how anti-science your crowd has been. So I mean, this challenge shouldn't be over his capacity. I mean, he should be, just as part of your job as a scientist would be, to now and then, have to account. And it's not asking too much to sit there and say, yes, I understand those are the facts, and I should stop saying completely other nonsense that doesn't have anything to do with reality. All right, anyway, teaching wave theory of light isn't any better than handing kids lead paint chips to chew on. I mean, the idiotic idea has always been an idiotic idea. It's always been promoted on weak evidence and a functionally ignored evidence. I mean, clearly, if you're going to make comparisons to water, you should make all the comparisons. That is, you should make the comparison to the single slit and then the multi-slits. You shouldn't just pick the one that fits a little bit and then ignore all the other phenomenon that doesn't fit at all, where waves don't work at all. But that's what they do. Because there really are. They're propagandists for a religion. They have the religion of the magical particles that aren't even particles, okay? The wavicles. You really have to call them something else because they're not particle physicists. They don't believe in particles. They believe in whatever. Ken Wheeler style perturbations in the medium that we won't call ether. Anyway, your silly theories will be on the ash heap of history as well as your reputation as a scientist. So yes, just to the future. Yes, some of you might be saying, oh look, we've soaked them in urine long enough. Let's just let it go. They're not the villains you've made them out to be. Yes, they are. This is what the human race's worst enemy are, the belligerently fucking stupid. And they're proving they're belligerently stupid. They will not, modify their beliefs. They will not let go of their traditions, their religion. Even though we rationally figure out what a bacteria is, and we now figured out that there's no point in painting lamb's blood over your doorway. It's a retarded therapy. I mean, see, some things like, medicine, they really can't get away with it, but they try, don't they? I mean, they really do try to evade any kind of progress. Because Pasteur showed up and he kind of just pointed out that you're all you doctors are dirty and filthy and you're infecting your patients, and they just didn't want to hear it. That's the truth. They just didn't want to hear it. Oh, you mean we've been wrong and we've been doing something wrong? Oh, I can't accept that. So I have to break reality so I come out looking like a hero instead of a villain. You mean I killed some of those poor pregnant women by, anal probing my horse before I, went to go take care of her? I mean, you people are just, anyway, humans. You're so disgusting. Ugh. All right. I probably should read. He's quoted my whole statement. Let's see. Excuse me, sir. This is a Wendy's. This is a Wendy's. May I take your order? Oh, moi schwa. What a zinger-rooney. So I'll put that on the mantle too, right? So yes, there won't, I think they need to be pissed on for a good few centuries. Because again, this is so obnoxious. They have no evidence. They can't point you to anything called evidence. And they're just saying, believe my story or I'll insult you. They have nothing else to do. I'll burn you at a stake because you're a non-believer. I mean, it's the same thing. So bad. What's this? Must frustrate you not to be able to delete, censor all these dissenting. So they call this dissension. Okay, this complete lack of a fucking coherent argument. I mean, I couldn't have made it any simpler for them, right? I mean, these are the arguments. can you provide evidence that these statements are untrue? Can you understand? This is what you have to defeat. Not me. These arguments. These are the arguments. You have to counter the arguments with some kind of evidence. It's all right. Anyway, so let's see. Okay, yeah. So all right. I'm just saying, it's plain. These are plain, simple arguments. I mean, either you understand them or you don't understand them. I'm not going to go through them again in this video, but I will in the future go through them again in just one small, concise video. And the only one I'm going to edit is this one. Okay, the experiment is easily modeled with a 2L length of string. Okay, now I'll say easily modeled as a thought experiment or in your imagination, because you can't create the dimensions of the experiment with a piece of string. You can't practically put wavelength notches on a string, okay, and put the two strings, you know, a tiny millimeter apart, and then go 10 meters away, and you know, you can't. As a practical matter, it's a little difficult to do. Not impossible, really, though, because the pattern actually does get magnified. All right, so the argument with Stephen Bro. I should make this bigger. Well, I'll read his comment, right? Yeah, let's see. It was just some sort of trash. Let's see. Okay, he made a video that was absolutely useless. All right, so I'll just paraphrase it. I think it's here. So it's just him babbling, you know, like the usual bullshit. All kinds of stuff in this. All kinds of materials, like I don't know what this floor.
Those are just to represent the.
I don't know what the, you know, I don't even know what that is that creates those lines. But he's saying those representing the waves. So at least we're getting the idea that he is a wavist. So he does the experiment where he can't turn the lights off or something, and so he does it again with a completely different pattern. So this is the pattern he first uses on a curved screen. Obviously not a very good pattern. So I mean, it's all getting washed out, so obviously you can't really tell if it gets better or worse because it's such a shitty pattern. Well, anyway, then it goes to this other pattern that has a whole lot more bars, right? So we know this is a completely different double slit experiment. I mean, you know, lots of bars inside, tiny. That means this is a very wide double slit experiment. Lots of bars, and it basically does point out that when on the curved screen, even though the curved screen is a little bit further away, so he has a flat screen and a curved screen. He has the flat screen in front of the curved screen, so when he does the curved screen, it's actually, you know, further away, so there's less photons. I mean, they're more spread out. But you actually can see more, okay, on the curved screen. You actually can see this node out here better. But, you know, it's not huge, not a huge difference. And I didn't argue it would be a huge difference. I mean, what I argued was if you actually collected these photons, you'd see they keep going around the arc, and it creates proportionally sized notches. You know, and that was the argument. And the point is that's how it should be viewed, because that's what the mathematics is predicting, is that location. And he still hasn't argued how the mathematics is actually predicting on a flat screen. It just doesn't make any sense. There's a huge difference between the simple argument, right? I mean, we're arguing, which we shouldn't even have to argue, about two different locations in space. All right? I mean, I should put this flat line right on the top of this line. I mean, you can understand that, yes, the math is the same in all these locations pretty much, but obviously once you get out here, this place and this place are completely different locations. I mean, and obviously the effects of distortion on the flat surface are going to be, you know, great on that surface. You're going to have a small thing here is going to be a big thing over here, you know, because of this expanding arc. So I don't even know why he's arguing this. It's so obvious that it's obvious that the L doesn't change in the math. I don't know why he keeps saying it does. Somehow the L changed to this location. So I changed the distance in the math from this distance and I changed it to this distance. There's no evidence of anybody ever doing that. So why is he saying it's what they are doing? I mean, there's just nothing indicating that anybody does that math. And obviously, if you did do that math, you'd have to have some feature built in to compensate for the fact that the pattern is going to be stretched by this extra magnification. So anyway, I'm just too stupid. All right. So pretty much a worthless, 11 minutes beyond just, hey, that's a pretty good pattern. So that's pretty good. That's the only thing good about it, is he has a very nice double slit pattern here. And so that's worth something in itself. That's a little too far. Unfortunately, he has to keep focusing the camera, which, it goes right into focus really good for one frame. So I'll go through it and I'll grab the good frames out of it, because it is a good pattern. I mean, it's a really good double slit pattern. I mean, compared to the crap, see, the video he's on defending. I mean, the bad science he's sitting here defending used an example, the double slit, that was, barely visible as a double slit, right? I mean, this is what it was. I mean, it was so bad you could barely see the two patterns in it. It was so bad. And so Stephen Bro knows this is what the thing really does. I mean, it's a dramatic pattern when done correctly. There's two patterns here, right? The little tiny bars on the inside, and there's a lot of them here. There's like 20, 25 inside each node. And the obvious envelope pattern. This is the double slit experiment. And it clearly is telling you, whoa, two patterns. I have to explain two patterns. How am I going to make two wave interference? How am I going to use the Young analysis and create two patterns? It ain't going to happen, is the obvious answer. All right, anyway. So back to Stephen Bro argument. So he typed all of this crap on, paragraph, just tons of crap saying this is so obviously I'm wrong about the fact that the nodes are the same size, when he's obviously wrong. And it's just so stupid that he would do this, and now he's still doing it, even though I've sat here and tried to explain to him, obviously there's something you're missing, because there's no mechanical reason for me to believe there would be a difference. So it all comes down to, it's so obvious in hindsight. I should have known. As soon as you put the 2 point sources, right, you're creating, you could call these foci. Foci, is that what they call them? Focuses? And then you end up making, it's like an orbital parabola, right? If you have two focuses and you make a string and you tie them together and then you go around, what you'll find is that this is how you make a ellipse, not a parabola, sorry. So it's the diagram of an ellipse, and two focuses. But the catch is the closer these two focuses are, okay, the less of an ellipse it is. So it becomes almost a perfect circle if you have them just a millimeter relative to this line, okay, which is meters. That's a 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. The nanometers of the wavelength of photons, or at least the micrometers, to meters is a 1,000,000 to 1 ratio. So this is a tiny amount of distance here. You always have to remember this is a millimeter. This is meters. Okay, this is a millimeter. This is a meter. Huge difference. Okay, so the distance between the focuses now is so small by comparison to the distance you're doing it at, that there will be, this will make what will look like a perfect circle. Okay, so if I have a very tiny distance between the focuses and a very long distance for the radius, the L, I'm going to end up with something that looks exactly like a circle. And if I have a circle and I do this trick, okay, it's basically, the circle is just saying, the idea would be is it doesn't matter where I go, I'm going to be traveling on the same, I'm not going to be doing this extra distance thing here. So I'm not going to be cutting, the pie slice idea. equal distances equal volumes, which is sort of the rule. So you travel more distance where you have less volume. You travel faster. Yeah, you travel faster where you're closer and slower where you're further away, because you need less distance on this line to create more volume in here. But over here, you need more distance to create the same volume. But anyway, that's not really essential to understanding the point. What I saw that was kind of obvious and made this interesting was that you could sort of understand it by just understanding this line, right? Because in the case of this vector, where I take the two strings and I'm at this point, in alignment with the focuses, all of the string is in this plane. All of it's in this dimension. It's going in one dimension. And in these cases, all the cases where I'm going across here, the string's obviously sort of going, this way and this way, it has this dimension to it, and this is in the opposite dimension. So obviously my string is in a sense shorter in this dimension. Obviously it's shorter, so you can see it's a shorter line. The total distance is shorter. So I just thought that was interesting, that again, it's a thing where if you analyze it dimensionally, you can get you can see it as being kind of obvious that this distance isn't in the same direction. And so you've lost it as a length of the string. The string is shorter in a sense because it's moving in a dimension you're not counting. And when you have the string moving in the same dimension, all of the string, then you're going to have a longer line. All right, but anyway, so the argument, the simple point is that because this is such there's such a huge ratio difference between this distance, okay, and this distance, hundreds of thousands to one, okay, that this will be a circle. For all intents and purposes, every notch will be the same. There won't be any difference in the notches, and it doesn't matter which way it is a circle. We're only analyzing this half of it, obviously, because the light's only going this way. So, this half of the circle still theoretically exists, and you can sort of understand if it's just a circle, how could it know the difference between going this way and going that way? And it really can't. So I don't know whether Stephen will concede that he believes it because apparently he did it, okay, but he did it at completely wrong proportions. What he probably did was put 2 points at 5 inches apart, and then he had a string that was 10 inches. He had 2 to 1 ratio. So instead of a 1,000,000 to 1 ratio or 100,000 to 1 ratio, he did a 2 to 1 ratio and found that as you move around, what I just pointed out starts to happen, right? At this point, you have a big part of the string not going in the same direction as the other pieces of string. So it's kind of a lost piece, so it's a short amount. And so you have a short bar. And then when you go this way, the string's getting longer and longer, so your arc is longer. And so now the distance has to be longer to get the same movement of string around the other string. So the theory would be is that by Stephen Bro's theory, if the real experiment was at 2 to 1 ratio, then the bars would be getting bigger as you go out here. So you'd have this, they'd get progressively bigger as you go around. But because the ratio isn't as Steve thinks, or as he has wrongly assumed, it doesn't happen. The difference is so infinitesimally small as a comparison to the enlargement you've made in the pattern. The tiny little 1 millimeter difference, in the length of 5 inches is just not detectable. you're not going to detect. This is 5 inches, and this is 5 inches plus 1 millimeter. You're just not going to see it. No chance. Alright, so what else can we add? I'll think about what. I don't know if we need to add anything. I mean, there's some point. I mean, just the fact that, again, that I realized, okay, last night that I said, oh, these are just focuses. This is what they use to draw ellipses. And so it was, my bad for not thinking of that in the first place and recognizing that obviously it is an ellipse that you're viewing it on. But it's a tiny ellipse because of the fact that this distance of all of this stuff is huge compared to this actual difference in, this 10 wavelengths or 500, even 500 wavelengths is a tiny amount of distance. It's, not even a millimeter. And this is meters. So this is meters of distance, and this is a millimeter. So obviously, the fact that going this way, you lost 1 millimeter, and going this way, you gain that 1 millimeter, obviously it can't add much to the pattern, because it's only a millimeter of difference. Nothing can get much larger than the other stuff, okay? I mean, it's a millimeter. You're measuring a car and you're, on the street. Now, somebody argues all the cars are the same size, and the only difference is a single inch. Some cars are an inch longer, some cars are an inch shorter. Come on. Not going to be worth talking about. So if he wants to say he's technically correct, because it will actually be a little larger node over there, but it will be larger by such an infinitesimal amount that you won't be able to detect it. I mean, yeah, I think that would be ridiculous. And I think his whole attitude is ridiculous. He doesn't know what physics is. He doesn't know what science is. Science is a search for the truth. He's playing some entirely other silly game for which I don't even want to be familiar. Yeah. Alright, so I'll be back to see if there's some other point that can be made that's relevant, that's not too redundant. Yeah, maybe I'll do the, whatever his name is, the weird name, most guy made a reference on the video also. But as is his comments, I don't know, they're always a bit clunky and useless to my purpose. In the sense that he's one of these people that seems to think, oh, these are all open questions, and they're not really. I mean, the box you can draw with the facts is a small box. We do have more. I forgot one of Dr. Lincoln's, his response to my statement that, yes, see you on the ash heap of history, so to speak. Look forward to reading your amazing scientific advance. So it's not just mine, in the sense that it's just a fact, and pieces of the fact have been argued by people, and you people keep ignoring it. You people keep just dismissing it, okay? And you're showing how you're doing it. You're showing right here how impossibly difficult it is to get you to answer anything, okay? So I've done this before. Every single physicist I have contacted has weaseled out of having to be interrogated regarding the veracity of their evidence. You're all pathetic cowards, and you all play this idiotic game that I have to pay you some extraordinary amount of money to do something rather ordinary. Okay. I mean, they're charging $50 to talk to a physicist for 15 minutes. I'm offering them $2,000, and they won't do it because I'm offering to record it, okay, to force it to be a real event, not a phony event. You can't just lie to the dumb kid anymore, because I'm going to be a witness. There's going to be witnesses. So your little molestation of their young minds is going to be on the record. Okay. let's see. I look forward to reading your amazing scientific advance. Well, I've just shown it to you. The scientific advance is going to be recognizing just a few basic facts, which are this experiment, the single slit, is the two-source experiment. And this experiment, the double slit, is the four-source experiment. That's one of the simple little insights. And again, that's been written in other people's papers. They have ludicrous explanations attached to them, but whatever. It's a fact. And you're running from it. Okay. In any reputable journal. So again, journals of what? We rub each other's hiney. The Ivory Tower Times? Yeah, the Ivory Tower Times. Why don't we just, that's all they might as well be called. It's the Ivory Tower Times. Because it doesn't have anything to do with physics. It doesn't have anything to do with facts. Who are your editors? Who are your judges? Oh, the Pope and his bishops? It's like even talking about who's on the bench, in our own democracy. Oh, you mean Trump's political hacks, and then you have Biden's political hacks? Oh, they're not honest men. There's no honest judges anywhere, are there? Is that what you're going to argue? Is that the system produces honest men? Or advocates? The publications make money by telling you what you want to hear. They don't make money by telling you, wow, you sure have made a lot of mistakes. Anyway. Or even National Enquirer. Yeah, well, that's clearly what, a lot of your fans, your defenders, that's clearly their tactic. You're the one who wants to play in that area. Okay, you're kind, let's just say. You're groupies. Okay, they got that written all over them. If you can reach that caliber of publisher. So again, another high caliber. They show, you're saying you've all shown great integrity, in being responsive to critique. And obviously, no, you've been despicable cowards, and that's why I had to start offering money in the first place, is because you're too much of a coward to do it for the honor of science. Truth. It's just a fact. All right. So now we'll move on to, the other comment. I'll go find that. Alright, so found it. It's a good thing I don't do much commenting. It's finding these threads, trying to update them. You have to go newest first and then go through 4 days of comments to get to this. I don't know, is there some simpler way to view comments? Because I don't know of it. And this really is a waste of time. Anyway, so this is the Miss Kamomo Sky. So I would have preferred he linked to my video, but he didn't do that. Photons might be, I don't even know this word, spherical particles after all. Spherical? I don't know. And the mind-boggling problem could be explained by particle trajectories and plane diffraction caused by the slit edges. So there's no such thing. You can't say plane diffraction because the word diffraction to them is a wave word. You're really not allowed to say it because you're saying diffraction is moving off at an angle. They won't let you do that anymore because diffraction to them is spreading. They won't let you do it. Caused by the slit edges, which are 2n per slit. So that's not very useful. 2n per slit. I don't know. So anyway, he has this paper he linked to. So we'll, here's a quote out of it. Now I thought the interesting quote was where they said there's 4 sources. So to me that was a really great quote out of the paper, is the acknowledgement that it's a 4-source experiment. These experiments clearly demonstrate that the so-called interference and diffraction phenomena are actually edge effects. Okay, edge effect. photons has a well-defined trajectory instead of the conventional thinking of slit effect. So they're basically saying that if the interference is happening, it's happening immediately, okay, because frankly the photon already knows where it's going, okay, if we follow its path. So if we could see its path, like you can see vapor trails, I'm trying to think of gas chamber, that's the wrong word. You know, when you look at radioactive particles in the why the hell can't I think of these words anymore? Well, anyway, and you can see the path. So if there was some way we could view the experiment from on top, you know, looking down on it, and watch what happens to the photons, and we could see the trails. The point is if you look at the trails, okay, it's clear that the bars actually do make trails. So if you could see the laser beam, so you could blow smoke, you know, and you could actually see the laser light, like it was still visible, there was so much of it, and you could see where the light was going, you would see that there's no interference here in space. It's not happening. There's just clear straight lines going to be coming off these surfaces going to the locations. So and you're going to see where the lines meet, and those will be the only lines you'll see, are the ones that meet. Something like that. But anyway, that's the idea. So the experiment is they do the experiment and they use a fish tank, you know, to shoot the light through. So they're trying to make the light more visible, you know, a fish tank with a little bit of crap in it. So you can see that there aren't interference points in this space. And it did whatever it decided to go wherever it was going here. It didn't decide to go where it was going out here after it interfered. So there was no point like here to here where some critical event happened and then it decided to go here, that kind of thing. I think that's enough of an explanation. It's not too sloppy. No need for mysterious interference with itself. But again, their explanation is wackier than, you know, the conventional theory is wacky, and theirs is just as wacky. So I guess this guy deleted his comment. Forrest Larst, who probably was Farley the Troll. So he sort of said there are three problems in the current mainstream explanation of the subject. The geometry that is used to describe the experiment. Two slits should at least have four edges to produce waves, because the single slit has two. Yes. So that's another way of just saying you can't say the single slit has two sources and then not say the double slit must have four sources. You can't really, that's just sort of a rule. You can't evade. Okay, the actual single slit experiment, the lack of providing good ones. So yeah, I don't know what that's not much of a critique. Good, you just go with the facts that the single slit has character defects, has aspects that have to be explained, like the double maxima. And the point is the double maxima is actually demonstrating that those two lines, the two vectors that appear to be undeniably in phase, the two going to the middle, that, as I've pointed out. So this is, Dr. Lincoln doesn't think this is an important fact. So even though Richard Feynman said this kind of crap, lots of people have based their analysis on the silly notion that we know the center must be bright, it must be an on, because these two lines are the same distance, and therefore they have to be the same wavelength and have to be in phase. And they don't realize that this is 1 millimeter. And this is 1 millimeter. This going in doesn't allow you to spread the pattern. Therefore, you're not magnifying the pattern with distance. So this can be 1 bazillion miles. Bazillion. All right. And it's still 1 millimeter. So, I mean, imagine it goes 1 bazillion miles. It gets enlarged to the size of an actual galaxy. Okay, the nodes are now a galaxy wide because we have projected on the movie on such a screen so far away. And now the movie is so freaking gigantic, right? It's the size of a galaxy. Well, this is still 1 millimeter. Okay, it didn't get any bigger. So 1 millimeter inside the size of a galaxy. All right. Yeah, so I guess maybe this doesn't mean much. And what you're really supposed to be looking for is the stuff doing this. Stuff going the same direction. Vectors going the same direction. That's what you're supposed to be looking for. The fringes are the part of the pattern that are getting magnified with distance. The stuff inside can't get magnified with distance. That's the key realization. I'm just going to argue. Anyone who's interested in this subject, this is a very big idea. Big idea. If you don't realize this, you will misunderstand. I was there, okay? I did that for whatever, 40 years. I didn't realize, this doesn't mean anything. It's non-negotiable. The center has to be an on, okay? Because these two lines are the same distance. So what? They're inside a millimeter. And if you actually went to the trouble to actually do the experiment, actually draw your vector lines, you would realize that, oh, wait a minute. If I do the straight line for here, okay, let me draw it correctly. And you can understand that, oh yes, there's no obligation for it to be an on. No obligation whatsoever. So what you really want to compare is when they start going in the same direction. When this line and this line, see, this one isn't going opposite now. This is the straight ahead for this point source. So these are the two surfaces. Okay, so this one's straight up for this one, which isn't the wrong way. And this one is going the right way, which is this way. And so now you're going to try to do your nodes. And you could understand that there's no obligation, if I have an odd number of wavelengths in here, that at this first location it would be an on. And it can be an off. Okay. So inside of 1 millimeter, it's on. But as soon as I go outside that 1 millimeter and I start doing this, all of a sudden, off. So there's a big off and a little on. You can kind of get that. And then the ons would be here and here. And you could sort of understand that this on, even though it's small, just a millimeter, could just fill this in. And you really wouldn't see anything but one big node instead of these two nodes. Simple explanation. This is how it really works. Okay. And all you have to do is realize, of course, this doesn't mean anything. Okay, it's happening inside of 1 millimeter. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. The lines that matter are these lines, not these lines converging. Huge fact. I mean, it's just a huge fact. And they won't even hear it, let alone respond to it. Okay. Let's see. So let's just read the rest of this a little bit here. Two slits should be at least have 4 edges to produce waves because single slit has 2. The actual single slit experiment, the lack of providing good ones, okay, did that. Photons are not well understood, but does it give a reason to tell all these fantastic stories about the reality in the name of science? Yeah, really. It's in the name of religion, okay, in the Leibnizian tradition. Okay, who cares about evidence? Force the science to fit the religion. Force the evidence to fit it. It's the Emile Chatelet way. Why not try to accumulate understanding rather than throwing bad analogies? Yeah, and the analogy to water is a bad analogy. Drop a petal in a pond and then see where it interferes with itself. Oh yeah, it doesn't. Why not use 1/1000th of the budget that allocated to build monstrous accelerators and use it for fundamental research? Yeah, putting photo plates on the two sides of the experiment and see if you can detect pattern all the way. Whether photons are actually being deflected at the very high angles. Because if you can't collect any, then there goes Feynman's theory, right? Feynman's out of luck. Because obviously the photon doesn't go to all the locations. So that one's done. Alright, I did not much content. I don't know what that means. I did, but not much. Okay, so another comment by an asshole who deleted his comments. Okay. I'm posting this again. So there's no content anyway. I actually posted a question about the same part and slides. Okay, so the Huygens optics video. So the other guy who I pointed out to the guy, and you know, where he's cheating the argument. Another guy totally unresponsive, won't answer, nothing. No, can't get anything out of him. He just wants to sell his religion. Alright, so the link, here it is. Yeah, I don't want to do any of this bullshit. Yeah, open it in Firefox, duh. Sheesh. Alright, so this is the diagram. So this paper is horribly written and the illustrations suck. So can't say much. But it does say in here something about the four sources, which is good. So they do all this introductory stuff, blah 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 blah. How Einstein said, I haven't learned anything in the 50 years I've studied photons, haven't gained any knowledge, blah 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 blah. It's all worthwhile stuff, but even their drawing here of doesn't fit their own description. So they're trying to make this the modern version of the Young experiment, and then they end up drawing these two wavy, liney things coming out of the slits, which indicates that they still believe that crap. That somehow two vectors are deciding the pattern when they say right in their own description that it's four vectors. So I mean, it's not very helpful to take, here they say schematic of improved Young's double slit experiment. Well, it's not very well improved when you don't really explain anything. So they say here ink, they put ink in an aquarium and then they shoot the light through the aquarium, the pattern, and apparently they get some sort of imagery. But they don't explain any of this imagery. They don't explain what these are pictures of. Is that the light going in, the light going out? Is that in the aquarium? Well, none of it. No, there's zero explanation. And, these dimensions are so tiny that who knows what you're getting. Now, there's some decent images of pattern here, right? So again, this is another example of the double slit pattern where you can actually see a lot of pattern here. Of course, where, Professor Don Lincoln couldn't give a shit about this truth. Couldn't care that this is the real phenomenon you're trying to explain. You're not trying to explain on, off. You're trying to explain on, off, then off, on, 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 off. I mean, it's, a lot, it's more complicated. Well, anyway. But all this analysis, this is some wacky theory they have of what a photon, a left-hand photon, right-hand photons. I mean, it gets into all their own bullshit. So instead of just documenting that they have some evidence that the current model is flawed, they get into this whole crap of trying to argue their bullshit. And frankly, it's bullshit. So, not much to say about that. They draw pictures of their whatever tons. you know, all, so anyway, so it kind of just ruins the whole thing. So instead of just saying, well, look, this is an indication that interference isn't happening in space. Okay, it's not happening here in space. Okay, it's sort of done as the photon left the slit. It's already on a trajectory. It's already going a straight line. And but the wave theorists could argue that, yeah, well, that's consistent because we're basically saying it's already had enough interactions to decide its fate. So it's already done its entanglement thing, and it already did its unentanglement thing, whatever the word. What's the word they use for that? God, I really hate this getting old thing. Words just don't pop the way they used to. So anyway, D something or other. Where they go into a superposition and then they're outed. Somebody's, it's a homo. And now all of a sudden it has to go somewhere because we know where it is, and so it's stuck, having to, what's the damn word? Forget it. I don't care. I don't care enough. I mean, the idea is that the photon is a ghost, and then it becomes mortal again. And so the wavists will just say that it did all of that, within the first tiny little bit of distance. It moved away from the slit, and so it already did all of that crap. Anyway, the whole thing is so stupid. I mean, the whole conversation about this whole nonsense of something turning into a thing, and then it escapes all contact with the universe, and it does stuff, and then all of a sudden it gets back in the real universe and gets hit by something, and we know where it is, and therefore it decides to reappear as a thing. I mean, you can't really get sillier, could you, as just wild, insane guesses at the truth? Yeah, so here's the Einstein quote. All the 50 years of conscious brooding have brought me no closer to the answer to the question, what are light quanta? So Einstein wasn't satisfied with the answers he had, clearly. But anyway, and that science was providing. But whatever. I don't know. Like I said, maybe I can find the force source part in here somewhere. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so enough. Blah, 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 blah. I will endeavor to persevere, blah, 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 blah. And unfortunately, yes, no comments on any of these videos from anybody. So, no concession that what I've itemized as a description of the photon is a good statement. It explains the facts well, and clearly any kind of rational interpretation of the facts means that a lot of theory stated by physicists can't be true. What Feynman said in his video is mostly nonsense. Goes for Professor Lewin too. I mean, it's non-negotiable that the center is a maxima. It is negotiable. Alright, anyway. So, till the next time and such. Physics girl. Oh, I drove a hydrogen car. Because that's physics. These little gimmicky bullshit. Oy. So, whatever. I just hate people. So anyway, till the next time and such. Yeah. This has been a DraftScience video presentation. This will not be on the ash heap of history. This will be in a little nice museum place, where they say, hey, these are, good things that happened. Yeah. And Professor Lincoln, he's going to be in the pile where bad things happened. Humans got dumber. Alright, so till the next time. I already said that, so I'll do it again. Alright, this has been a DraftScience video presentation. Thank you for your attention. Blah blah.